Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Survivals of Triumph show. My name is Laura Hill and I'm from Swansea in Wales, and my guest this evening is Hazel Cresswell-King, who will be telling her journey about child sexual abuse and her journey from the darkest steps of abuse to divinity. So would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, Hazel? Over to you.
Of course. Hello. Hi. Thanks for inviting me on this evening. I'm really excited to be here, Laura, so thank you. My name is Hazel Cresswell-King and I'm a transformational alchemist and quantum light healer. I am here to take women on one of the most incredible journeys that I myself have been on, from the darkest depths of abuse to completely connecting to your sovereignty and living your heaven on earth. So that's what I do within my job, within my work, and I'm here to take you on a journey of self-remembrance, as well as completely collapsing those our timelines from abuse for us, for our ancestors before, and also for our future generations ahead.
Brilliant. Before we go on, a little bit of an emotional alert. So I understand that many of our viewers may have experienced sexual abuse in their childhood, or maybe they've been affected it in some way. So this may, make you emotional, and if it does, then obviously, feel free to leave the room and go and watch something else. But we just have to put that out just to make sure that you're all okay. So thank you very much. So Hazel's got an incredible journey to tell us. She is almost featuring in a book. Well, she is featuring in a book.
I am featuring in a
book. She's going to be featuring in a book, and she's going to read part of that for us today. So I'll hand back over to you, Hazel. Thank you.
Well, I did just think that the most easiest way to tell my story would be to read it just like I've written it, as a story, which is going to, like you say, is going to be in a book that I'm a multi-author of called Sacred Dance, which is coming out on Amazon on the 4th of March. So I wanted to read to you my chapter, and I called it I Dance with My Soul, Anything is Possible. So sit back, relax.
I'm going to relax now.
Just listen to my story. I couldn't ignore it any longer. It became louder and louder, more defined, more clearer with every day. I had to say yes to dancing with my soul. I didn't know where it would take me or to what, but I had to follow. Little did I know it would lead me on the most incredible journey of my life, to reclaiming my sovereignty, remembering who I am as a divine soul, a glorious being of light, powerful and wondrous, how we all are if we just look within ourselves. Listen to that all-knowing voice that resides within us. Trust in ourselves that we will be led to the life that we are truly here to experience. So what did my soul lead me to? Where did it take me? Who did I become once I'd said yes? Who am I today? As I sit here with you, I am truly blessed with the knowledge and wisdom of who I am. I'm a woman who faced her biggest fear, who stared death right in the face and found life. I am a woman who has shown great strength and courage, who has bared her soul so bravely and vulnerably, who has cracked open her heart and discovered the love that she has for herself, who faced the shadow parts of herself, who healed the core wounds of her existence to discover her magic and gain the confidence to share her art with the world. I am the woman who no longer feels afraid to speak her truth or share her wisdom, who has rewritten her story, collapsed her timelines from abuse, embodied her sovereignty, and found her divine feminine. I am the woman who is living a life led by her soul. But like so many of us, that's not who I was. I remember asking myself so many times over the years, why am I like this? Why am I so fixated on death? I even remember as a young child not wanting to go to sleep unless mum told me that she would see me in the morning. It was the only way that I could close my eyes and feel reassured that I would wake up the next day. Even after having my babies, my children, I wouldn't let myself sleep, no matter how exhausted I was, no matter how traumatic the birth had been. I was so scared to just let myself relax, to just go to sleep. Surely I'll die. My births felt like near-death experiences, especially my youngest. I hemorrhaged with both of them, but this one was the worst. I remember seeing my husband standing in the corner of the room, holding our baby girl, as the medical staff around me tried to save my life. I only had to close my eyes, and it seemed like I would have gone. My work would evolve around death too. It started around 20 years ago when I heard the first calling of my soul. I gave up a career in the NHS to set up my first business as a spiritual teacher, but soon found myself wanting to help those at the end of life. Before I knew it, my soul led me to the funeral industry, working in all areas of the profession, including setting up my second business as a funeral celebrant, during which time I also founded a bereavement centre. All of this would take me to sitting alongside a wonderful therapist in my centre. She had volunteered her wellbeing services to myself and my team. I remember how I leapt at the chance to take up her offer of counselling, because by that point I was so ready to tackle the overwhelming fear that had resided within me for all these years, the fear of death. Not one day would pass by where I was actually present in any given moment. I was consumed with the fear of death 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it didn't matter where I was. I could never be present around my loved ones. I was always fixated on when or how they would die. How would I die? How would they be if I wasn't here? How would I feel if they weren't here? And it seemed stronger around my mum and dad. It wouldn't stop. It wouldn't leave me for one moment, and it controlled my life. One afternoon, while sitting in our session, I would find the answer to the question that I had asked myself for so long. Why was I so consumed with the fear of death? In one given moment, a moment of utter shock and realization, my body and mind finally allowed me to remember. I had been sexually abused by my parents' best friend, George, as a child. I was threatened to comply by being told that if I tried to tell anyone, my parents would die. I would die. There it was, staring me right in the face, the answer that I had longed for, and it turned out to be my worst ever nightmare. I went through all the emotions possible, felt all there was to feel about being a victim of abuse, realizing I had taken on the responsibility of keeping my parents safe all these years. I had tried to protect them all my life, became my mum's mum instead of being a daughter. I was constantly in a freeze or flight state, playing out the same existence over and over again, the same behaviours and patterns, yet I could also see how long last my entire life made so much sense. As crazy as it seems, the clouds seemed to pass and all the pieces of the puzzle came together. Yet as they did, I began to realise I didn't have a clue who I was. I had been so disconnected from my body, my heart and my soul, that my head had controlled my life. I had lived a life in death. With the overwhelming fear of my parents dying still residing within me, I just couldn't bring myself to tell them. I couldn't destroy their world, all that they believed in. Yet one day, without warning, my soul urged me to tell. I remember sitting that day with mum and dad as they watched my girls happily playing. I was as distant as ever, not present, just consumed by my thoughts. Before I knew it, the words were coming out of my mouth. My heart was racing and my hands were sweaty. Mum, I need to speak to you and Dad. I'm going to take the girls home and come straight back. But I'm out tonight, Mum said. Mum, I need you to be my mum today. I need you to listen and just be there for me, no matter what. I took my girls home and I drove straight back round. Mum and Dad were sitting on their sofa under their window with the sun shining through like a ray of divine light. I sat down with my heart racing once more, and again without any control, words just came out. I need to tell you something that will seem impossible. But it is true. With every cell in my being, it is true. George sexually abused me as a child, and to protect myself, my mind had shut it out. But every single part of my body, every single part remembers. I don't think I will ever forget the shock on their faces, that moment of deadly silence. I went over to them both in tears, knelt on the floor and just asked my dad to hold me. Dad had never been able to deal with emotions very well, and I could sense the embrace was making him uncomfortable. Hold me, Dad. Let me cry like your little girl, I said. He did. He held me until I no longer needed to be held. I left the house to go to the centre where I would meet my therapist for a Reiki healing. We hadn't been in the session long before I started to panic that Dad was in his shed about to hang himself. Let me call him, I shouted. I need to know he's okay. Of course he was okay. It was just the reality hitting me that I had done the one thing I had been told not to do as that small little girl, and now I had to face the consequences. In truth, it was my soul leading me to face the awful fear that had controlled my entire life. I had to just trust and continue to follow its calling. As time passed by, Mum, Dad and I began opening up to each other, and for the first time we found ourselves in a supportive, open and honest space, trying to come to terms with something so difficult for us all to comprehend. It seemed to bring us closer by the day and led to so many wonderful conversations with each other. I began to see Mum and Dad for who they really were. Little by little, I pulled myself up from the depths of despair. I moved away from being the victim of abuse, and I began to carve a new life for myself, to feel happiness in my heart. Once more, the calling of my soul beckoned, and a year on, I was selling my home and relocating to a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. For the first time in my life, I felt able to move just that little bit further away from my mum and dad. The house was my dream home. I remember crying as I walked around it for the first time. I couldn't believe it was mine. Little did I know that it would become the ultimate of my nightmares. It would be like the punishment that I had been so afraid of. The one thing that I had dreaded, the one thing that had consumed me each and every day. The weekend I moved into my beautiful new home. My loving, protecting, strong and steadfast dad took his final breaths. I had told them. I had done the one thing that I was told not to do. And it happened. My darling dad was gone and my world fell apart. Dad's first anniversary came upon us, and a month later I would share in a beautiful day with my mum. We walked and we talked in the sunshine. And before I knew it, Mum was telling me the one thing that I had told her and Dad back on that day. I feel sure that I was abused when I was a little girl, she said. And there it was, the ancestral wound that had held us all for so many years. The wound that I would later come to know as the one I was brought here to heal for our future generations. Only a matter of weeks would pass by, and without warning, as suddenly as my dear dad, my best friend, my whole world, my beautiful, gentle little mum, Nanny Pammy, would take her final breaths to be by the side of my darling dad. I was alone, devastated, empty, riddled with guilt and blame for telling them the one thing that I had saved them from for the last 40 years. I had done the ultimate thing. I had stood up to my abuser. I'd faced his threats, and then I lost my wonderful parents. Mum's anniversary would come upon us, and in the December of that same year, I would find myself feeling as lost as I did the day they both died. Not only had my world on the inside changed, but the world around me had too. The new year arrived, and I found myself hearing that ever familiar call, but this time it was to take me to something I never thought possible. I found myself taking my recap training in EFT, and as I did, I began to see how I had fallen back into victimhood, playing out the same old behaviours and patterns as before. I was consumed with anxiety, and it was sucking what little life I felt inside right back out of me. In that moment of realization, I knew I had to pull myself up. I had to listen to my soul and get myself back on track. I would find myself signing up to an anger embrace workshop, filling in the details on autopilot. I hadn't got a clue why I was doing it. Something was just calling me. On the weekend of the event, we began to really release our anger through bodywork, and I could hear that little voice inside saying, I still don't know why I'm here. As I sat down, I began to feel an overwhelming amount of anger inside, and before I knew it, I was screaming. I was later picked to undertake an anger release and forgiveness process, where I found myself sitting in front of a chair as if I was talking to the man that had abused me. I remember thinking, I've dealt with this. I don't have anything left to say. How wrong was I? To this day, I don't think I've ever experienced anything so powerful in all my life, so life-changing mentally, emotionally, and physically. The process would take me to the depths of my trauma, and I just trusted that all would be well, that I was doing this for my highest good. I screamed every word of anger that I had held in my body for 45 years, every single moment of guilt, regret, hatred, every single emotion that I had experienced through the abuse. I said everything I wanted to say to George, no holding back, open and raw for all to see. The women in the group held me in love and compassion as they bared witness to my vulnerability, which helped to heal the wound of not being heard or believed. I reached a point in the process that allowed me to forgive my abuser for every single thing that he had done, for how he had affected my entire life, robbed me of so much. And as crazy as it seemed, it was possible. I could finally be free of him. He could no longer have a hold over me, and I was no longer a victim. I was now a survivor. That night, I knew that I would be a new woman when I awoke. For the first time in what seemed forever, I slept so peacefully. I had experienced a total rebirth, and over the coming days would see the physical changes literally in my face. I could feel it within my body. I felt so much lighter, so much younger. It truly was incredible. I was at last free. As the weeks went by, I continued to notice many changes within myself on all levels, a sense of peace and knowing that suddenly from nowhere, I found myself with another layer of abuse to deal with. 2 more abusers that my mind had chosen to protect me from, yet my body was now clearly sending me the messages that it was time to heal once more. It was as if the first layer of abuse was a trial run. So this time I just faced it head on without hesitation. Bring it on, I remember saying to the anger coach as I approached for a private session. Let's deal with this devil and put it to rest. This time the process seemed even more powerful than before. It was a completely different level of abuse, and I would experience a massive death and rebirth process to the point where I actually stopped breathing for a few moments. And then took an almighty gasp as my higher self took over and healed my body, my heart, my soul, and my mind. This time it would take me 2 weeks to physically overcome that process. It only demonstrated to me how incredible my light was, how incredible your light is. How through answering that call, I had risen from the ashes like a phoenix. Nothing was impossible, and I could achieve all that my soul desired. So much so that within a month, I would then hear the loudest call of my soul ever. And before I knew it, I had made the biggest investment of my entire life and invested in a program that cost me £18,000. Mum and Dad had worked all their lives to give me a good inheritance, and it would be this that would help me to become the woman I am today. It took me a long time to see that, though, as I was so afraid to spend it, but I soon began to see that I didn't need to invest it in material things or property. It needed to be invested in me, and it would remain with me throughout the rest of my life. It would always be with me. Through the program that I invested into, I began to see the life that I truly wanted. And it certainly wasn't one of drama and sadness, pain or hurt anymore, but a new life full of love, joy, and happiness, of a soul-led life and business, my very own heaven on earth. And it wasn't long before I began to see the incredible possibilities that lay ahead. That investment was truly part of my soul's destiny, and it led to the reclamation of my sovereignty, my soul, of understanding everything, my soul's entire journey and the wonder of me. So you see, I am blessed with the knowledge, with the wisdom and the clarity. I have reclaimed my sovereignty, and I am now here to help you reclaim yours, to reclaim your soul and all that you are, to collapse abuse from your past and present timelines, to free your ancestors from their pain and suffering. I am here, as are you, to lead the way forward for our future generations, to raise the consciousness of our planet as we move into a new earth. I'm here to show you that you can live your heaven on earth, no matter what you have suffered. Anything is possible.
Wow. I was like listening to that, and I so wanted to listen to you. I was holding my breath at some points because it was so interesting. Wow. Thank you so much, Hazel. I'm sure if we look at the comments later, we can't see them now, but if anybody has got any questions, please pop them on, and myself, and maybe if I tag you, Hazel, we can help people after. So
absolutely.
oh, I'm speechless. What an incredible story, and wow, you have come so far. So I'm going to ask some questions now, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Let me have a quick swig of my drink.
Yeah, I've been drinking as well, because I was like, literally, especially when you're getting emotional, I was like,
it's interesting, you know, because actually reading it to you guys was the most emotional I've been, you know, and it just says, you know, how that will always, that story is just a part of me and always will be. It's
yes, 100%.
my story.
Yeah, and people think just because you overcome something doesn't mean to say that little things don't trigger you and you can get, you know.
Absolutely. It will always be with you, but it's how you begin to rewrite your story, isn't it? And how you begin to tell a new story.
I love that. And the thing is, what I say with people who've experienced trauma and difficult times, people often say they want to be, you know, they really miss the person they were before it all happened, you know, like domestic abuse or an attack or a rape or something. But the point is, the hard truth of it is you're never ever going to be the same person as you were before. You're just not going to be, because of what's happened. But like you, like me, with I've had different experiences to you, but different traumas. you create a new version of yourself.
Absolutely.
And then that's what you focus on. And like you say, you have life, you create heaven and earth. We only have one life. We hear this cliche all the time. Oh, life's too short, life's too short. And that is, and the part of the story that got me most was that you were told by abusers about your parents dying, and then that happened shortly after you told them.
Yeah.
And when people die, we go through the 5 stages of grief, and part of that is the what if stage, and that is, what if I'd done this? Or especially in things like suicides or heart attack, what if I wasn't working that day? What if I noticed something? What You go through that naturally, but you actually had somebody tell you for many, many years that you held on to, 45 years?
Yeah.
That your parents are going to die if you told somebody. And then that must have been like horrific.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it took me a long time to stop thinking that they died because of me, because I had told them, and I know that's not the case, but I don't know, it's just part of the story, and I know that I didn't cause their deaths, but I guess their deaths became a part of my story.
Yeah,
and they became a part of the power of the story, if that makes sense.
absolutely. And you were owning that story,
Yeah, and you said a little while ago about how you learn to become someone new, and Laura, what I truly believe is that you actually become who you really are.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, my whole life was as the result of that abuse, because every single way I behaved and I reacted and I thought and I felt and I needed was all because of that. Every single event that continued in my life, relationship problems and breakups and even being a mum, I realized how I was a mum as a child. I was bringing my children into the world as a wounded little girl myself, and how for 45 years I was living as a wounded little 5-year-old. So it's like now I'm becoming the adult, but you learn to become an adult. It's like you literally are reborn again, and you're like, well, I remember having conversations with myself. How can I feel joy? How can I feel love? How can I live a life of abundance if I actually don't even know what that feels like? Because I realized I didn't even know what love is. My love's always been a desperate need. And it's always been a desperate need to have a man love me. Always. And then I suddenly realized, but the love is in me.
Yes.
And as I connected to the love within me, I then suddenly realized, oh my gosh, I actually don't know what it's like to be in a relationship with a man really without any form of need. What is it like to just step back and allow that man to love me? What is the love in a relationship? Because everything I've experienced throughout my entire life, I truly don't believe is 100% what love really is, because I've always had such a need. So your new journey is one of discovering, what does joy feel like? Well, to me, joy feels like being free and dancing and expressing through your body and allowing your body to do all that it wants to do, because you've stopped it from doing so much all these years.
Yes. Gosh, yeah.
And I remember the first time I sat with myself, and I was with a friend, and I was just sort of saying to her, I just connect to myself here, and I can go within myself and feel my body within me. And all of a sudden, tears were rolling down my face, and I went, I can feel why you like me. I can feel why you love me. I can feel me. This is me. This is my love, this is my essence, my life force energy, and I have never felt it before because I've been so consumed with the abuse, with the trauma, with the healing, with everything. I've only ever experienced those things, and it was like, I know what joy is, I know what love is. And having a conversation the other day with another friend, and talking about, you know, just by these conversations, our conversation tonight, and, you know, having a conversation with a friend and talking about your journey, or how you work with a client and you see them transforming into somebody new. That is what abundance is. Our talking tonight is abundance.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, there's financial
Absolutely.
abundance, but oh my God, this is true abundance. Sharing your light, sharing your story, having deep, meaningful, soulful conversations with people. That's abundance.
Yes, absolutely. And wow, everything you're saying is true. And do you know what? There is so much power in laying yourself bare like you just did.
Yeah.
And it's very, very cathartic. Now, it's not for everybody.
No.
You know, it's not for everybody. So if you never want to tell your story, that's absolutely fine, you know. But some people find healing in telling a story. And I'm sure even tonight you'll find healing again.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
And I've told my domestic abuse story in front of, I think, 120 professionals about 2 years ago. So I worked for domestic abuse charity. And after that happened, I did have an apology for the police because there was something to do with the police that wasn't right. And after this policeman said sorry at the end, after they all went, I just broke down in front of colleagues and partners with different domestic. But it wasn't like I was so sad. It was like this release.
Yeah.
Because I carried that anger towards
Absolutely.
so long.
Yeah.
And it was so cathartic. It was
liberating.
It was so liberated.
Yeah.
And so empowering. I
Yeah.
felt like a queen after. I just felt so strong.
Yeah.
And even though I looked like I was really crying in front of people, I was like, like you've been crying, but there's so much strength in that. Like, how many of us hide away in a bathroom and cry, even for anything, because we don't want to show people our emotions? And really, emotions are a sign of strength. We should be showing people our emotions in this world. The humanity of feeling, it should be shown. Because our emotions are a guidance system. It's to stop us from getting like super angry, whatever. We're supposed to be dealing with it step by step at each stage. I mean, I teach this to kids, the anger iceberg and the anger ingredients, before it gets to that point where you can't function and it affects your life so badly. So
absolutely, absolutely. Because that if you don't release it, and that's what we all find out, and by all the anger I've suppressed all those years, all the hurt, all the pain suppressed, no wonder that my body I felt like an old woman, because I wasn't releasing that emotion. I just felt so heavy inside, so heavy that even especially with that anger embrace workshop, when I released all the stuff, I mean, I physically saw the change. I took pictures of myself over the coming weeks, and you could see the physical changes. I could not only feel them, I could see them. The shape of my face changed. It was mad, absolutely crazy.
Incredible. That's absolutely incredible. And the thing is, what many of us don't realize is the impact of a thought and emotion. It does change the physiological aspects of your body. Even if you suffer from anxiety, the effects on your body, you can feel your heart rate, anger, you can feel it in your limbs. You want to punch, you want to clench your teeth. The effect of emotions on our body is so strong. And I tell you what, I bet half these illnesses and pains and
without a doubt,
the psychosomatic. So what that means is like a psychological effect. Psychological distress transcends into a physiological, biological symptom. That's what I mean by psychosomatic, if I've got the term right. But yeah, absolutely. You know, you were so strong to do that. I really do applaud you. Like, that was amazing. And that chapter is going to be in that book, is, you know, is going to be fantastic. So I want to ask a couple of questions, because I'd like to know. So how, you said there was two abusers or three abusers? Three. Okay. And you never found out until adulthood, because your own brain has tried to protect itself, basically.
Absolutely. I'd always had, I would say, definitely, as nothing, pieces of the puzzle didn't start to come out for me until in adulthood. And then mainly because I was having difficulties in relationships, and I'd be absolutely fine in my relationship, and all of a sudden then I wasn't, you know, I didn't want sex. I just felt dirty. I felt uncomfortable. And I can remember saying to my auntie, I think it was, and we were having this conversation, and I just said to her, do you know what, I feel like I've been abused, but I can't remember. Well, little did I know that is exactly what had happened. I just kept getting these feelings, but then I remember then all of a sudden these memories started coming in my mind, and I could remember seeing him standing in the doorway, and I was laying on this bunk bed, and we'd stay over there, and I was laying on this bunk bed, and I can remember just seeing him in the doorway, and I felt uncomfortable. And then the more I suppose the more my brain felt like, okay, she's probably okay to learn a bit more. I literally just, the next memory was I could feel him right next to me, and I felt even more uncomfortable. Wow. And then another memory would be, you know, like when your little mum and dad says, oh, just say goodbye to Uncle George like you do. I didn't want to go say goodbye to him. And I can remember how I felt, but there was nothing going on in my head. My body was just telling me how I remembered.
Right.
And then for years, well, forever, I just could never sleep. Every time I went to bed, I'd start itching. My eczema would flare up. I'd get agitated. I'd get, awful. So it was like my body was trying to show me all these things over the years, but I couldn't make the connections. And it's so important for me to say, you know, there are so many women, I am sure, that don't even realize they've been abused, because they literally will have been like myself. You know, you're such this young little child who's going through such an horrific ordeal that the only way for you to go through that is to completely disattach.
Association.
And that is, and that's exactly what happened to me. And you know, I find myself in conversations now with people, and it's like I know that something's happened to them. I know something's happened to them, and I won't say it because it's their journey to discover, if they will discover. But it's really weird how you begin to see that in other people. So to be honest, I was consumed with this fear of death, but actually the fear of death was consuming what the actual thing was underneath it.
Yes, yeah, and it's his words from George, isn't it? Basically, he told you that, he implanted that in your brain, and you've just kept hold of that.
Absolutely,
forever, I mean, isn't it?
Every single time. I can remember, like I said in the chapter, I can remember, you know, that after having my children, and I'm laying in the delivery suite, and I'm so exhausted, and I can remember just keep jumping like this and starting myself and waking myself, and I do it when I get home. I can find you just doing that deep sleep, doing it, and then I'd be jumping up, I'd be waking myself up, and that was like that for so long. And I guess once that first layer of abuse had come up, my body felt comfortable to then allow the other two to come up. But I still don't remember, and I don't want to remember, and you don't need to remember the details and things like that, because you just don't. You know, I did a lot of journaling in my book, because I remember waking at nights and I just could not sleep, and I was itching and I felt so agitated. I'd just get pen to paper and I'd just start scribbling. You know, I'd scribble, I'd swear, and then all of a sudden stuff would start coming out as to what had gone on.
Wow.
But I only got bits, and I didn't need to know the rest. I can remember I was always petrified of going for like smears, those kind of things. Wow. Petrified. And I now know why. And I also had two breast cancer scares, but I truly believe that was all to do with my fear of death. I was fixated on that, and it was to do with my fear. But when I went for these appointments to go and get the scans and this, that, and the other, I was put in a situation that triggered my body.
Wow.
And another layer of that, and another part of what happened to me in the abuse came up because I was being triggered.
Yeah, by showing your body private parts.
Yeah,
you know,
I was told, I remember going in to have the ultrasound, and they wouldn't let my partner sit next to me. They wanted him to sit in front of me, and I just freaked and absolutely flipped because it triggered me, because I then saw a memory that I was not being abused alone. There was somebody watching, there was somebody else there as well as the abuser.
Oh my gosh.
That brought all that up. And I then, when all of this came out, I contacted the Truth Project, which is all about investigating child sexual abuse. Okay. And they sent me a picture of this location that we would go to tell our story. I never got there because when I saw the picture, it triggered me again, but it was triggering me because that was where I was taken to.
Wow, so you were taken to...
I was taken from my bed down to the shed. I can't remember exactly, but I know it was what looked like a shed. So the door of this venue triggered me again. And I remembered then that was the door. I then remembered watching the film, is it Split? Where the lad in there, the man in there had been abused. Something within that triggered me about something else as well. It was crazy.
Wow. That is just insane, isn't it? So the other two abusers, do you know who they were? Were they connected to your family?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do. And they were, so the first little of abuse was, I worked with my inner child and I was 5. So I know that went on 5, 6, maybe younger than that. It was sort of 4 to 6. It felt like it was for a long time. Wow. But I always had this little child who's about 5. And then the other two, it was around sort of like 8 to 10 age, that kind of thing. Yeah. Wow. But one of them specifically was on a whole complete level that I have never wanted to or felt the need to acknowledge who that is. I know who it is, but I don't want to acknowledge that.
No, that's fine. Just the only reason I'm asking, and I don't want to delve, for what...
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Is that I know statistics. I know in Wales, I know there's approximately, the stats are, there's about 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 children are being abused. So I know domestic abuse stats are 1 in 4. So if you've got a classroom of children, you've got quite a few in there who are being sexually abused. If you're a teacher, you've got quite a few in there who've experienced domestic abuse. And it's like this silent, private thing. I can't even describe the words, how I'm feeling to explain this. What I mean is that there's children there, and it's so sad because they have been told, like you probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I do work with children, we have to ask them, about we do problems task, and one of the things is secrets. And I explain to the children that, there's good secrets, like somebody's surprise birthday party, and then there's bad secrets, which somebody may be threatening to harm you or your family, or that something bad will happen. And they're like, yeah. I said, have you got, any bad secrets? And if you don't want to tell me now, blah, 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 that's okay. And I have come across children who have been sexually abused, or they've reported it and it's been suspected, but then when they've gone to the police, nothing further's happened because they won't speak to the police. But I've worked with quite a few children. And one of the signs, if you work in sort of social care, you'll kind of know this anyway. But one of the signs is displaying sort of sexualized behavior at a young age.
Yeah.
Did you do that when you were young? Can you remember?
Well, what I want to say to you is that, yeah, absolutely. But I also can say that one of the second and third abusers, one of them was the same age as me.
Oh gosh. Okay. So
it was somebody the same age as me doing things to me.
Okay. Right. So I've actually come across this in thing, but I can't go into detail.
No.
Yeah, and that's what people don't realize. And then the sad thing is, even though that person's an abuser, that person is obviously being sexually exploited and probably susceptible.
Oh, absolutely,
because they were do it for the pleasure of a vile, sick individual.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, that's what they are: vile, sick individuals, evil people. And
I will say as well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it, because what I call my main abuser was somebody who was held, as they normally are, within high regard within the community.
Absolutely.
Within a job that you would hold high regard for. And
this is what people don't realize, isn't it, Hazel? We all have this thing about, years ago as well, it was like the flashers, isn't it? The man in the long back, the long coat, it was be a stranger. But the thing is, most sexual abuse cases are actually
people you know.
All
three of them were people I was extremely close to.
And most of the time, it is actually the father, the biological father, or a stepdad, or even a grandparent. This is what people don't realize. They see, when we think of paedophiles, we think of this stranger that, and they are there. I'm not saying they're not there, and they do capture them, and we see all these things on Facebook. But it's like with rapists, isn't it? They think it's the man in the dark alleyway. Most rapists is someone or actually in a marriage or in a partnership. And for everybody who don't understand that, if you say no, that's no, and consent is consent, and that's it. But it's so, and there are elite paedophile rings, and there's very high level people, and there's been lots of things where police forces have been told not to investigate because it involved like politicians at high level and
police themselves.
Police themselves, and look at the whole thing with Hollywood and the Jeffrey Epstein thing. This runs through all levels of society, no matter what color, race, creed, religion, nationality, country, culture. It's across the board. And it's got to stop.
With absolutely. I mean, you've only got to look at, just going into some of the groups that I've gone into to do my own development work, my transformational work, for myself. Nearly every single woman in those groups has been abused.
Wow.
And I was amazed, but I also was amazed that once I uncovered what was going on for me, I had so many friends and people I knew that had been abused.
You felt comfortable.
Yeah, and then there was my mum telling me the same thing.
Yes, because I was going to ask for that, and you just reminded me. Thank you that you said that your mum then felt that she had been abused.
She did, and I said to her, I just said to her, Mum, do you know what? I've always felt that. It's really weird. I just had always felt that in some way, that as what Mum had experienced. And we were going this beautiful walk, and we were just talking, and she said, you know what? I'm sure that how I felt back then, I'm sure I was abused.
Wow.
And we didn't go into any further details, but you could just tell. And it was like this real, just like with me, it was just such a release, just such a, I'm sure I have. And to admit it to yourself and to go, God, I have. But I remember when I then realized for myself, because a part of mine was not remembering, I then didn't think anyone would believe me, because I couldn't visualize it, I couldn't remember. How could anybody else believe me, you know? So I've digressed a bit, but it was like you talked earlier about, you know, it's so liberating to tell your story. It's so liberating to be witnessed, to have people to actually hear you and to see you. That's such a massive part of your healing, massive.
And like with me, my domestic abuse journey, and I work in domestic abuse now in my normal day job, and you understand what those people are going through. I've had the training and all the, you know, I'm a specialist in that, but
yeah,
I've been on the other side, and so have you. So we have literally got 7 minutes left. So do you want to tell people what you're doing now? And then maybe I think what you were talking about with the anger workshop, maybe if you could give a name of that, because I think would find it thing.
Yeah.
And I'll just quickly say, if you are in Swansea, there's a charity, or if you're in Wales, there's a charity called newpathways.org.uk, if I'm correct. If you're in the Swansea area, which many of my friends are, it's down on SA1, just opposite Tesco Express. It is amazing. They do counselling, whether you're 393. They do everything there. It's absolutely fantastic. So that's our help in Swansea and Wales. And over to you, Hazel.
Perfect. So, okay. Obviously, if you want to read my chapter again, or if you want to link in with the other beautiful chapters that the other wonderful people have written within the book, it's called Sacred Dance, and it's going to be launched on Amazon as a bestseller from the 4th of March. So that will be out then. But I am now launching my high level container, which will take women on a journey over 12 months to it's probably more for this particular container is probably more for women that know they've lived that life of abuse, and they're now ready to really find out who they really are and uncover all of the stuff that it's left over them, so they can peel back and discover who they really are, just like I have, really. So it will take them on that journey. So if anybody's interested into just dipping in to see what that's about, I am running 3 live 1-week events that will cover some of the aspects within that program, and they are running them from the 14th of March and the 4th of April for 5 days. They're in the evenings, UK time, 6:30. So that's called Diving into Divnity. And then my Divinatrix, which is my big program, 12-month program, is being launched on the 30th of April. But for those that are not ready for that particular journey yet, then I've got my own transformational coaching packages that I offer to take women through that journey as well. For anything, you know, I mean, there's so many of us, so many women feel so unworthy for so many reasons, and there'll also be so many reasons under that.
Yeah, it's like an onion, isn't it? Peeling back all the layers. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work very much with women that hold a lot of pain within their body. So they've got a lot of physical ailments and health conditions. And I'll work with women through my coaching, but also through a lot of my healing modalities, which are more quantum light energy healing. And I also then work with women in a healing program that really want to focus on their soul remembrance and really connecting back to their soul, that real spiritual level. And I also work with those more advanced women that really know they hold a lot of ancestral wounds. I mean, obviously I had been abused, my mum had been abused, who knows how many generations back that had gone. So I then work with one of my healing modalities is to actually collapse timelines. So it works with all your timelines to collapse the abuse out of that.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
you are an incredible woman, Hazel, and I'm sure you've inspired everybody watching you. And then obviously we're recording this, so I'll be downloading it, and then I'll send you a copy, and we'll put the YouTube one up later as well. So it'll be on my YouTube channel, Laura Horton Hill, and the Survival to Triumph show. And yes, that's wonderful. Have you got an email address you want to
I have, yes. My email address is info@Hazel Cresswell-King.co.uk, and people can find me on Facebook under Hazel Cresswell-King Transformational Alchemist. And I've also got a Facebook group, Women of Divinity.
Wow, brilliant. That's fantastic.
And I'm on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and what's your YouTube channel? Hazel?
Oh, it is just Hazel Cresswell-King.
There we are. I'll have to subscribe to you and you can subscribe.
Yes, absolutely, Laura, 100%. And I very much look forward to seeing where our journeys take us together at some point too.
Yes, it'd be nice to do something, together, motivate women and
absolutely
motivate everyone, because it's not just women who experience sexual abuse as well, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? We must remember that. Many
absolutely.
Boys, many men, and again, it's even harder.
Yeah,
and to disclose that.
And I think it's nowadays it's different abuse, isn't it? I know some of the clients that I've worked with, and they have been male, and they suddenly have the same moment that I had of realization. Oh my God. But it's been abuse through the internet. It's been, because that's what it's like nowadays, isn't it? It doesn't have to be physical. It's virtual abuse now as well as physical.
They've sort of got the everywhere. It's like evil thing, everywhere that and
it's time for that to stop. It is time for that to stop.
It is time. And advice quickly for parents of children, because obviously we want to wrap them up in cotton wool, like we know, like with the grooming online, but how do we keep the really young children safe? Like, what's your views before you go about, because there's this big thing, isn't it? I saw a thing on Facebook the other day about there was a child, I don't know if it's a true story or not, but they've gone to school and said somebody had eaten my cookie or something, and she was referring to her private parts. And it got, I don't know if it's a true story or just a reference, but it got like poo-pooed by the school and everything.
And I was gonna say, Laura, I think we need to listen to our children, but if you can't always hear what they're saying, you almost need to hear what's underneath what they're saying. But we need to listen to them. And this is not a dig at schools, but I mean, even in the work that I did around grief, they don't always listen, they don't always have the time. And I think that's so important to do that, is to try and listen. It's hard as a parent because you are so emotionally attached, and you do miss a lot of stuff. But I think it is so important to listen and to know that what our children are telling us is real. It's not made up. It's not made believe. Just because it might not suit a situation that you're in your life right now, and just because what they've just told you might completely kick everything up in the air and turn your life upside down, it doesn't matter. You still need to listen and you need to take action, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be your husband or your and it's not just men who abuse as well, because I know of cases where there's been female sexual, but you see these teachers just and then even
one of my abusers was female, was the same sex.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's really powerful, isn't it, to like hear that from your real life experience. Like, we know of it, there's even grandparents not, and there's families who sexually exploit their own children for money. Mothers do that, and it's not just in poor countries either. It's not just about money. It's, for some people, for some reason, it's about getting a kick. There's a kink. It's a sickness, and it's
and you're right. And there's
it's such a pleasure. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but
you're okay.
Some people just do it for pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there are some that do it just literally because that's within their makeup and that's who they are. But I do believe there are so many that do that because they have become the abused becomes the abuser. And I truly, look who I could have been, someone so different. I could have been somebody so completely different, couldn't I? You know, I could have then carried on living a life and I could have just become an abuser. But, you know, so I think that's why I'm part of myself, as I'm so passionate about that generational thing, because, you know, it is just generation after generation after generation. It's just fed down and down. And it's time now for us to go, this is not going down them generations anymore.
Yeah.
This is stopping now.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, absolutely.
So we've gone just over time. I ask at the end of the last two I've asked. Right. Have you got a golden nugget of really good advice if there's somebody watching now who knows they have been, right, and they know, and they've held on to it, and they're listening to you, and that you're an inspiration, and they're thinking, right, I need to start somewhere. I'm probably, I don't know if I'm ready, but what should I do? What should they do?
I would say reach out to somebody, reach out to me, you know, because I understand, and I've walked that journey, although it be a different one. We've walked similar journeys. And reach out, just reach out, because even if you don't do anything about it now, just having somebody to share it with, somebody to tell it, so it's not on the inside anymore, that you can actually get it out, is so powerful. And if you can't even find that you can do that, just get a piece of paper, get a pen, scribble like hell, swear like hell, and just let whatever needs to come out. And even if you never tell a single soul, ever, you've got it out. You've shared it on paper, and it's not in here anymore, and they can't have a hold over you anymore.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask one more thing from you. And before we go, because I've had this in my mind, people will say, how on earth could you ever forgive?
I think forgiveness is about you as a person. If you don't forgive, you will forever hold on to all that stuff. But by releasing it and saying every single thing that you ever wanted to say, then you can forgive. I think for me, being the spiritual person that I am, I see it on so many different levels. And I can remember a friend saying to me, I actually put a video up on my YouTube that said, I have healed my abuse, so much so that I have connected to the soul of my abuser, because he died literally 3 months before my dad died.
Wow.
Yeah, he died 3 months before my dad died. And I just felt like I wanted to go and see him in his coffin and talk to him and all these things. I couldn't even go and talk to him when it all came out, because he had suffered from a severe stroke and was basically living out the rest of his days in a home. He wouldn't remember anything. He wouldn't remember me or anything. It was pointless. And I thought, well, really, that doesn't really do me any favors anyway.
No.
So, you know, I think then I healed so much of it and let go, because if you don't forgive, you're just going to hold on to it forever. And we all have different journeys. And, you know, I would have said to myself, how the hell can you forgive someone for doing the most ultimate of evil things to you? But you can. And I'll tell you something else, Laura. I'll end with this, crazy as what it seems, but I did some work in a healing that I was having myself, and talking about letting go and how we hold on to things, because it's so important for you to rewrite your story, to tell a new story, because you will continuously live that story. If you don't, you will always be a victim. You will never be free of that ever. And I did this healing, and I actually saw myself connecting again to the soul of my abuser. And I saw us, not everyone believes in this, but I saw us as souls creating the contracts for living this life. And he was arguing with me and saying he didn't want to go. I'm not going to do that. I said, you are? Come on, we need to do it. Yeah. But by the by, anyway, in that one moment, he said to me, this contract is finished. You don't need to live this anymore. And in that moment, I saw how I was holding on to him.
Wow.
Does that resonate? Yeah. Because it was like he had been controlling my entire life. And after giving the forgiveness process, I'd let it go. After telling my story, writing my story, I'd let it go. But for some reason, I was still hanging on to the entire thing. And it was like, it's done. Let it go. And otherwise, you'll never create the life you're here to live. You'll always refer everything back to that all the time.
It's that bitterness, isn't it? And so many people hold on to that, even from not even just sexual abuse, even people who've got divorced from their husband for an affair or something, any situation in life. If you keep that within you and keep in the victim mode, and yes, you have been a victim and you're fully entitled to feel like you've been a victim, I'm not taking that away.
No, absolutely you are.
It will destroy you. It'll eat you away. It'll fester in you. And I know, because after my divorce many years ago, I held on for anger probably about 3.5 years. I think my ex-husband at one point, he said like sorry in a text. It was just a sorry about, I don't even know what he was about now, but it was like one word. And I just went, and it was just like, there's different things to play there, but it's like, I think even with that helped, but even without that, you've got to let it go. And I started changing from that moment then.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's one thing I wish for everybody out there, is to not carry their trauma and their abuse for 45 years, for 40 years. I want them to let it go as soon as they can, so that they have a longer life without that. That's just my wish for everybody.
Yeah, because stress shortens your life, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
And thank you, Hazel. That's been absolutely amazing. And just to add on to the end of the video, my coaching is very different to Hazel's. I deal with people who have probably gone through the point of getting to survivor, which are just sailing along. I'm not an expert in sexual abuse, so if you want to go, Hazel, but I do help trauma survivors create the life that they want. But my work deals with it once they've got to a point of survivor. I'm not dealing with it from the victim, the really difficult stuff that needs some picks. You need, a proper therapist or somebody who's been through it and knows her stuff, like Hazel. That's what you need. And you need to be careful which therapist or counsellor you do choose, that they are an expert in that field and they really know their stuff, because they could do further damage. And for
Really,
with the trauma, you've got to be careful where you go for certain things, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think I'm like you, Laura. I think a lot of my work is aimed at those that have come out and want to create that new life, but also because of where I've been, then I am there to listen. I am there for those that just need that guidance and pointing to the right direction.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And yeah, we've gone over time, because I think we could talk for like hours on this.
We could, absolutely.
It's so fascinating. Well, you're on my Facebook. If anybody, Hazel Cresswell-King on Facebook, or come to me and I will send you on. So thank you very much, everybody. That's episode 3 of Survival to Triumph show. Done and dusted. I'm a newbie to this, so really pleased. I've had the 3rd episode and another fantastic guest. So thank you very much, everybody, and good night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.